We've heard it all over the past few days, whether it's the Cowboys' year, or whether the Chiefs are destined to three-peat, or that the 49ers are going back to another Super Bowl, and you get the point. And one of the best, or maybe worst depending on if your favorite team lost in week 1, is the overreactions from the first 60 minutes of football. And especially when teams either confirmed the preseason expectations they had, or like the Bengals, lost to a team that just finished with a top 3 overall pick, and this is from a team that thinks they are Super Bowl contenders. And it's only one game, so they can still, of course, get back on track. Now, as a preface for today's video, we're not going to overreact to the point where we are screaming about how Dallas is destined to win the Super Bowl, or that the Packers are already done because of a couple of weeks setback with franchise quarterback Jordan Love. I have not commented on that, but I do think they'll be fine, and I think they can still very easily make the playoffs. But there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and with that preface out of the way, let's begin. And the first overreaction from week 1 is that the Eagles have an elite offense, and if they can play even league average defense, which I think they can, then there is a decent chance they go back to the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. And there's a few reasons I believe this, but this team put up over 400 yards of offense and scored 34 points in their week 1 game against the Packers. And why I think this take can be justified is there was a lot going against them in this game that will not be the norm or the standard moving forward. The field conditions were obviously poor for both teams and not just the Eagles, but the point is they're not going to be playing on an ice rink in the upcoming games, and they still moved the ball with ease and ran the ball very well. The Eagles' first 2 drives started on their own 10-yard line, and the first play was a loss of 5 yards, then the second play was an incomplete pass, and the third play was, admittedly, a terrible throw by Jalen Hurts, and it gave Green Bay the ball in their red zone to start their next drive. The other interception to Jair Alexander at the start of the fourth quarter was awful, and there's no justifying that. Jalen knew it was a terrible play, and I would be surprised if he makes another decision this poor all season. But again, the Eagles still put up 34 points. I like Jalen Hurts as a player a lot, and I think people like to downplay anything good he does, whether it's because he has a good offensive line, or good receivers to throw to, or now that he has a very good running back in Saquon Barkley. But even Eagles fans can acknowledge this was not Jalen's finest game, not even close. Now, he did have a couple of good plays, and the throw to Saquon on the touchdown was both a great throw and great catch, but Jalen missed a lot of guys, and he threw 2 very bad interceptions in week 1. One was a poor decision over the middle on a 3rd and 15 he didn't have to throw, and the other was a very poor red zone decision. But Saquon Barkley still ran for over 100 yards, A.J. Brown still had over 110 yards receiving, and Devontae Smith had 7 tough catches for 84 yards. Keep in mind that the Eagles' first 2 drives were both terrible, and they did not get the ball back for their 3rd possession until there was 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Their first 6 plays totaled -7 yards, and they still won the time of possession battle 33-27. They still ran for 140 yards as a team, and they still accumulated over 400 yards of offense in what was nearly 3 quarters, and they lost the turnover battle 3-1. As long as the Eagles do not beat themselves, they're going to be a very, very good team. And we saw last year how bad this team was down the stretch for a multitude of reasons, but they looked like the dominant offense we've seen for the past few years, minus the first couple of drives. And this was against a team that won a playoff game last year. Philly's next 3 games are against the Falcons on Monday night, the Saints in week 3, and the Bucs in week 4, and if they can get through this stretch, and Tampa is the game I worry about most, then the schedule after their bye week outside of a few games isn't that bad, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say this team can win 13 games. And given that I run a football YouTube channel, it should not come as a surprise that I enjoy attending football games and live sporting events. And I went to the Vikings-Ravens game a couple of years ago. It was the game where Justin Jefferson grittied almost the entire way across the end zone, and it actually happened in front of where I was sitting, and it would not have been possible without the Game Time app. It was a great time, and to be honest, I'm looking to go see Joe Burrow and the Bengals when they come to Baltimore in a couple of months and play on a Thursday night. And whether it's being able to see the seat that I'm going to sit in before I actually purchase the tickets, or whether it's the all-in pricing, so you don't have an extra $120 in fees when you go to check out, which is something we've all experienced at one point in time, Game Time has you covered. They also have a new feature called Game Time Picks, which makes it easier to save on tickets, and they feature super deals, which are in the top 1% of value, and amazing deals, which are in the top 5% of value. Game Time gives you complete peace of mind and takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So download Game Time, create an account, and use code ANALYSIS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, that's promo code ANALYSIS, ANALYSIS, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. To the Music City to talk through the Tennessee Titans situation. The overreaction here is that they're in a tough situation with quarterback Will Levis. Now again, this is an overreaction video, and I want to believe in Will Levis in 2024, and I want him to be the guy for Tennessee moving forward. But what we saw against the Bears in Week 1 was concerning, and I think that's an understatement. There is one play in particular I was really disappointed with because it had home run potential, and Will missed a couple of things on this play. It was an orbit motion into a Yankee concept, and contrary to how Will's rookie year went, he had a clean pocket, and with as open as the pocket was, Will should have stepped up, reset his feet, and threw the ball across the field and helped Calvin Ridley, who beat Jalen Johnson on this route, by the way. Major praise there for Calvin, but Levis should have had him run under the ball with Jalen a few steps behind. This forced Calvin to banana peel the route as Will drifted right into where a pass rusher was and had his arm get hit in the process. This was a poor mental miscue from Levis. Not only that, but Tyler Boyd was wide open on the deep rover or Dover route. Sure, Will would have had to bring Tyler a little bit back to the ball because of the safety closing behind him, but Tyler would have absolutely made this play if Will properly led him back a yard or two towards the line of scrimmage. The read was fine, but the throw was about 10 yards too short, and if he connects on this ball, I think we're having a bit of a different conversation than what we're having around the Titans right now. There was also another play on 3rd and 15 in the third quarter where the Bears are playing cover 3, and Calvin beats his man, and if the ball is thrown accurately, it's probably a 67-yard touchdown, and in the worst case, it would probably be a gain of 40. Calvin created enough separation on this play, but Will threw the ball out of bounds, and Calvin didn't have a chance. The pick 6 was one of the worst interceptions you'll see from any player, let alone at the NFL level, and to make matters worse, that interception gave Chicago the lead with just under 8 minutes to play. Will did throw another interception on the final offensive play of the Titans game, but I don't think it's too bad in the grand scheme of things, because his left guard Peter Skoronski was beat almost immediately, and on 4th and 10 with a minute left in the game, Will knew he had to get the ball out, so I'm not going to kill the second interception with a quarterback trying to make a play with the game on the line. Technically, Chigakonkwo was open as the checkdown option, but who knows if he would have got the first. Regardless, I don't think the second interception was all that bad when you consider the circumstances leading up to it. But I do think there was cause for concern with Levis moving forward. I know Calvin Ridley isn't amongst the top 2 or 3 receivers in the league, but he was NFL open on 2 deep passes in this game, and Levis missed both throws, and it wasn't a great defensive play that you write home about either. And in a game where you lose without giving up an offensive touchdown and hold the Bears to 148 total yards of offense, along with your quarterback throwing a very ugly pick 6, I think there's cause for concern in Tennessee. To Cincinnati we go to break down the Bengals. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals are notorious for starting seasons slow under Zach Taylor. This was mentioned during the weekly recap, but the Bengals are now 1-10 lifetime under Zach Taylor in the first 2 weeks of the season, and they play in Kansas City in Week 2, who are of course coming off of a couple of extra days rest, and just being honest, I would be surprised if they don't fall to 1-11 in the first 2 weeks of the Zach Taylor era. Now, my concerns with Cincinnati are more than just they lost to the Patriots. I know Bengals fans will roll with, well, we went to the Super Bowl in 21 and to the AFC Championship game in 22 and even started out 0-2 in 2022 and would have made a run last year if we stayed healthy. But my concerns with this team for the rest of 2024 is there's been a tremendous amount of turnover on this roster over the past few years. My concern with the Bengals moving forward isn't even the fact they lost to the Patriots, a team that is perceived as inferior to the Bengals, but how they lost to the Patriots. I would imagine we all have the same opinion on Jacoby Brissett with little variance. I would imagine we all think he is a bottom 10, maybe even bottom 5 starting quarterback in the NFL, and that he's not going to lead a team to the playoffs. But it's not like the Bengals didn't know who he was prior to the game. They didn't just find out who he was at 12:58 for a 1 o'clock kickoff. If you put 2 and 2 together with how bad the Patriots' offensive line was heading into the season from a pass protection standpoint, you could probably infer their game plan was going to be to run the ball and play good defense, and whatever happens, happens. The Patriots know if they lose the turnover battle, more so than other teams, that they're going to be incredibly behind the 8 ball because they do not have the offensive firepower to keep up and put up 30 points in a shootout. So they went into Cincinnati, won the turnover battle 2-0, phenomenal play by Kyle Duggar by the way, ran for 170 yards as a team and had the ball for over 34 minutes of the game. And I think that's the most concerning part for the Bengals. They play the Chiefs in week 2, who have a much better offensive line than New England, and their next 2 games are home against Washington and at Carolina, so I do expect Cincinnati to eventually be 2-2, but they have a real test in week 5 against the Ravens. And if you couldn't stop Ramondre Stevenson, who I do think is a solid back behind a not great offensive line, what do you think Kansas City's and Baltimore's game plan is going to be when they play Cincy? Their game plan is going to be simple. Run the ball, keep Joe Burrow off the field, and dominate the trenches. And this was also in a game where the Bengals only had 224 yards of offense and went just 4 of 11 on third down. The Bengals' offense wasn't good either. Now, I do think they'll be fine, and obviously having T. Higgins miss this game was not good, but this was a team the Bengals should have beat even without T. And I really worry about their run defense moving forward because the elite teams in the conference, the teams Cincinnati is going to be chasing to try and get their first Super Bowl, are really, really good at running the football. And if they can't stop the run the way they couldn't against New England, good, and I mean good luck moving forward. The next overreaction is that the New York Jets are fine and that they're still amongst the best teams in the AFC. Yes, they got beat by the 49ers in week 1, and yes, they got beat pretty handedly, and in fact, it was 32-13 for most of the fourth quarter, with the Jets scoring a late touchdown to make the score look a lot more pretty than how the game was actually played. And there was a point in the game where the 49ers had 5 straight scores without the reigning Offensive Player of the Year in Christian McCaffrey. I think it was more of a statement win for the 49ers than a statement loss for the Jets, and there's a couple of reasons why I think that. The 49ers had 3 home losses in 2023. One was to the Bengals, in which Cincinnati went into the Bay Area and played a great game, but I think it is also worth noting this was in the midst of a 3-game losing streak for the 49ers, and after that they were fine and they went on a big winning streak. The other losses were against the Ravens on Christmas night, and the Ravens were one of the best teams all year, and they had the best defense in all of 2023. And the third and final loss was the Sam Darnold 49ers game, Carson Wentz Rams game in Week 18. So I'm not really going to include that loss like we do with the Bengals and Ravens because obviously there was a lot of context needed around them losing their third and final home game in 2023. But their previous home loss prior to the Bengals game, which was about midway through the 2023 season, was against the Chiefs all the way back in October of 2022. So it's been a long time for the 49ers in terms of how dominant they've been at home. So for the Jets to go all the way out to the Bay Area in week 1 in a game where Kyle Shanahan is obviously familiar with Robert Saleh, obviously has been able to pick his brain over the years and worked with him for a couple of years, knowing he knows how he games plans, knowing he knows what he's probably going to call more often than other defensive coordinators that Kyle Shanahan has worked with. I think the odds were stacked a little against the Jets from the beginning, given that it was a 3,000-mile trip. It was the first game and Aaron Rodgers played in a year, and obviously we know what happened when he played in week 1 of the 2023 season. So if the Jets were going to win this game, it was going to require a near-perfect game from the start. And I think the Allen Lazard drop at the beginning of the game kind of signaled how this game was going to go for the Jets. Their next 3 games are all very winnable, and I think the Jets will prove to be 3-1 after the next couple of games as they play the Titans, Patriots, and Broncos, and then even play the Vikings in week 5. So there's a non-zero chance this team goes from 0-1 to 4-1, and if Breece Hall gets going, which I think he absolutely will in the coming weeks, and if Aaron Rodgers continues to be the player that we've seen him over the course of his career, which again, I think he will be, and I think it's also worth noting that the 49ers defense is absolutely one of the best in the league, and Fred Warner played one hell of a game against the Jets, and he had a tremendous forced fumble against Breece Hall. Guys, they're going to be fine. I don't think it's the same old Jets. I don't think that we might as well already call it the season because the Jets are not going to go to the playoffs. They're a very good team. They got punched in the mouth, and over the course of a 17-game season, everyone is going to get punched in the mouth at some point, even the 49ers. The 49ers started out 5-0 last year, and they were on pace at a point to look like one of the best teams ever. I mean, they were routinely beating teams by double digits, and their only win in the first 5 games of last year that was not by double digits was against the Rams, in which Sean McVay opted to kick a field goal as time expired to make it a 30-23 loss instead of just taking a knee and having it be a 30-20 loss. All that did was glorify the score at the end of the game. The 49ers start out the year hot every year, and 2024, as you can see, is no different. The bottom line and the overreaction is the Jets are fine, and they are still absolutely amongst the best teams in the AFC. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 30% of people watching are subscribed. It helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.